where the sound of sirens sliced through the quiet. Police cruisers formed a semicircle near the wooded area, their red and blue lights flashing against the mist. A few joggers, wrapped in windbreakers, stood by the tape, whispering to each other. Something terrible had happened, and they could all feel it. Detective Howard Lang stepped out of his car, adjusting his coat as the smell of wet grass and gasoline filled the air. "What do we have?" he asked, his voice heavy from years of experience. Officer Martinez met him halfway, his face pale. "Young woman, maybe 19. Looks like she was attacked, found near the creek by a dog walker." Lang nodded grimly. Another one. Another young life stolen in a city that liked to think of itself as safe. He followed the officer under the tape, the soft squish of mud beneath his boots marking his steps. Cameras flashed. Evidence markers dotted the scene. The forensics team worked quietly, their movements careful and deliberate. Her name, they'd learn later, was Mary Quigley, a bright, outgoing student at West Valley College. She'd been out the night before with friends, celebrating the start of spring break. But she never made it home. As Lang looked at the scene, his gut told him this wasn't random. There was a strange calm to the way the area was left. No chaos, no scattered belongings. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. By evening, the story hit the local news. College student found dead in City Park. Police investigating possible homicide. Pashimo sent people. It was another sad headline that would fade away in a week. But for the small team at the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, it was the beginning of something that would haunt them for decades. The first suspect was her boyfriend, Eddie Monroe, a 21-year-old mechanic with a temper and a record for bar fights. He was brought in for questioning the next morning. Lang watched him carefully through the glass of the interrogation room. Eddie's eyes were red, his hands shaking. "I didn't do it," he said, voice cracking. "I swear to God, I didn't hurt her. I loved her." Lang leaned forward. "Where were you between 10 and midnight?" "I told you," Eddie said, wiping his nose. "I dropped her off at the gas station near her house. She said she was meeting a friend. That's the last time I saw her." Lang frowned. "What friend?" Eddie hesitated, eyes darting. "She didn't say, just someone from her class." That someone would become the center of the investigation. Police searched Mary's dorm room, finding notebooks, half-finished essays, and a few letters, one of which mentioned a man named Rick. But there was no last name, no phone number, no address, just Rick. For months, detectives chased dead ends. Leads dried up. Witnesses contradicted themselves. Then, as summer rolled in, the case went cold. Years passed. New crimes, new names. The file marked Mary Quigley homicide was pushed deeper into the cabinet. Officers retired, detectives transferred. Eventually, no one even spoke her name anymore. That was until Detective Sarah Vaughn joined the department in 2005. She was young, sharp, and obsessed with cold cases. Her father had been a cop before her, and she grew up surrounded by unsolved stories. When she stumbled upon Mary's file one late evening, something in her stopped. The case photos, the reports, the unanswered questions. It all hit her like a challenge. Sarah spent weeks reviewing everything: autopsy notes, witness statements, the old interviews recorded on cassette tapes. What caught her attention wasn't what was there, but what wasn't. There was no record of DNA testing. The case predated the technology. She requested that the evidence, the jacket Mary had worn that night, be sent for modern forensic analysis. It took months to process. "This is the lab," said the voice on the other end. "We found something, a partial male DNA profile. It's not in the system, but you might want to sit down for this. It's a close match to a known offender from the 80s. Name's Richard Archibek." Sarah froze. Archibek, she knew that name. He'd been convicted years ago for a string of assaults in California. The dates lined up almost too perfectly. Her pulse quickened. She drove to the prison the next day. The warden led her through a series of iron doors that clanged shut behind her until they reached the visitation room. Richard Archibek was already there, sitting across the table, hands cuffed, eyes dull but sharp. "Detective Vaughn," he said, a slow smile forming. "Been a while since someone asked about that girl." Sarah kept her voice steady. "You're saying you remember her?" "Oh, I remember," he said, leaning forward. "Pretty little thing, always smiling. Some people don't know when to stop smiling." Her jaw tightened. "So you admit you killed Mary Quigley?" Richard chuckled softly. "You think this is about one girl?" He leaned back, chains clinking. "You should check your files, detective. She wasn't the only one." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What do you mean by that?" He didn't answer, just kept smiling, like he knew something she didn't. The guard stepped forward to escort him out, but before leaving, Richard turned and whispered, "You're too late anyway." The door slammed shut, leaving only the hum of the fluorescent lights. Sarah sat in her car afterward, staring at the rain streaking dew on her windshield. She knew his words weren't just idle threats. She could feel it, the weight of something bigger than a single murder. She drove back to the office, pulled every old case file from the late 70s within 50 miles. There were at least 3 other unsolved murders of young women, all with similar details, all near water, all left in the open. Her heart pounded. Could they all be connected? She barely noticed the time passing. The office was empty when she looked up. Midnight. Papers scattered everywhere. On the wall behind her, she'd pinned the victims' photos. Connected by red string, a web of death that spanned nearly 30 years. The phone rang again. This time, it was the prison. "Detective Vaughn," the voice said, "we thought you should know. Archibek is dead. They found him in his cell an hour ago." Sarah froze. "What? How?" "Looks like suicide," the voice replied. "But something about it doesn't feel right." The call ended. Sarah sat there, staring at the photo of Mary Quigley. The silence in the room was deafening. She whispered, "What did he know?" Outside, thunder cracked through the night. And just like that, the case that had haunted a city for 30 years was far from over. Rain still lashed against the windows of the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office when Detective Sarah Vaughn returned to her desk the next morning. The storm hadn't stopped since the night she learned Richard Archibek was dead. The sky hung heavy, gray, and angry, the kind of weather that made everything feel worse. She poured herself a cup of stale coffee and stared at the crime scene board. Mary Quigley's photo was pinned in the center, surrounded by 3 other young women. Each one had the same haunting look, smiling yearbook portraits of girls who never got to grow old. Across the board were lines connecting names, places, and timelines. Red ink circled the years: 1977, 1978, 1981. All within driving distance of one another, all near water, all unsolved. Sarah picked up the autopsy report again. Each victim had traces of adhesive on their wrists, a rare type of industrial tape no longer made. She knew this wasn't random. Archibek might have been involved, but he wasn't working alone. Just then, her partner, Detective James Parker, walked in tossing it on her desk. "Did you get the prison report?" she asked. "Yeah, and you're not gonna like it." He sat down, flipping open the folder. They found Archie Becky hanging in his cell, bedsheet tied to the upper bar. No signs of struggle, no bruises, nothing. Just him and a note. Sarah frowned. "A note?" Parker nodded and handed it to her, a photocopy of a short, handwritten message. She wasn't supposed to die. It was never my call. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it. Who's he talking about? Mary, maybe? Or someone else? Parker shrugged. But get this. The ink on that paper? It's old. Like decades old. Lab says the pen he used hasn't been manufactured since the 80s. Sarah's eyes widened. So, someone gave him that note before he did. "And looks that way," Parker said quietly. "And whoever did it knew how to make it look like suicide." The office felt colder suddenly. Sarah leaned back in her chair, staring at the photo of Archie Beck on her board. His smirk from the day before now felt more like a warning than arrogance. Later that afternoon, Sarah decided to visit the old evidence room, a basement filled with dusty boxes and forgotten stories. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she walked between the shelves, searching for something, anything, that could connect Archie Beck to the other victims. Then she saw it. Box MQ-77. Mary Quigley's file. She set it on a metal table and carefully lifted the lid. Inside were photos, a few labeled pieces of clothing, and a manila envelope. She opened the envelope and froze. Inside was a handwritten letter dated March 1977, the week after Mary's death. The writing was shaky, almost panicked. It read, "There's someone inside the department. He knows more than he should. If you value your life, stop asking questions." No signature, no sender. Sarah's pulse quickened. Someone had sent this to the police back then, and it had been buried. She flipped the envelope over, and her eyes caught a faint stamp on the back. Received. March 12th, 1977, Santa Clara Sheriff's Office. "Someone in law enforcement tried to shut this down," she whispered. Just then a voice echoed behind her. "You're not supposed to be down here." She spun around. It was Captain Harris, her superior, a man in his late 60s with sharp eyes and a deep, authoritative tone. He had been around since the original investigation. "I was just reviewing old files," she said cautiously. "I know what you're doing," he said, stepping closer. "You're chasing ghosts, detective. Some cases stay cold for a reason." Sarah swallowed hard. "With all due respect, sir, a woman was murdered. Maybe more. And if someone in this department covered it up," he cut her off sharply. "That's enough. Drop it. Archie Beck is dead. Case is closed." She stared at him, stunned. "You can't be serious," Harris sighed, lowering his voice. "You don't know what you're digging into, Vaughn. Let it go before it buries you." He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Sarah stood frozen, heart racing. His warning wasn't casual, it was a threat. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her apartment felt like it was watching her, every creak and gust of wind feeding her paranoia. She sat on her couch, going through copies of the files on her laptop. Something about Harris's tone replayed in her head. Some cases stay cold for a reason. She searched the old department rosters from 1977. Captain Harris had been a detective back then, one of the lead investigators on the Quigley case. Her stomach dropped. She scrolled further and found a faded photo of the original team. Harris stood next to Detective Lang, the first investigator on the scene. But there was a third man, too, standing slightly off to the side. Detective Richard Harris, Detective Howard Lang, and Officer R. Archibek. Her breath caught. Archibek had been a cop. That changed everything. She printed the photo and pinned it to her board. It all started making sense. How he knew details no one else did, how the case files vanished, why evidence went missing. But the note, she wasn't supposed to die. It was never my call. That meant someone else had ordered it. Someone higher up. Her phone buzzed suddenly, making her jump. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Detective Vaughn? A raspy voice replied, You should stop looking into Harris. He's not the man you think he is. Her heart pounded. Who is this? Click. The line went dead. She stood frozen, staring out her window into the rainy night. A car was parked across the street. Lights off, engine silent. She moved closer, squinting through the blinds. The car suddenly pulled away, disappearing down the street. She grabbed her gun, holstered it, and whispered, All right, Harris, let's see what you're hiding. The next morning, Sarah drove out to the Harris family cabin, listed in old department property logs. The road wound deep into the redwoods, the sky still gray from the storm. Her windshield wipers kept time with her heartbeat. When she arrived, the cabin looked deserted. Old wood, overgrown grass, silence all around. She stepped out, gun drawn, and pushed open the creaking door. Inside, the air smelled of dust and mold. She swept her flashlight across the room. Old furniture, boxes, and a desk covered in papers. Then she saw it. A stack of old photographs spread across the desk. Photos of women, young women. And in the middle of them was Mary Quigley. Her blood ran cold. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned sharply, but it was too late. A heavy thud struck the back of her head. Everything went black. Before we dive into the final chapter, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this is where everything comes crashing down. The world was spinning. Sarah's vision swam in and out of focus as she tried to lift her head. Her wrists were bound with rough tape, the same kind used in the Quigley case. She was tied to a chair in what looked like the basement of the Harris cabin. Dim light flickered from a single bulb overhead, casting shadows that danced across the dusty concrete floor. A low creak echoed from somewhere above. Footsteps. Then, the sound of slow, deliberate breathing. Sarah strained against the tape, but it held tight. Her head throbbed where she'd been hit. She took a deep breath, trying to focus, trying to remember what happened. She'd come to the cabin looking for answers, and she'd found them. Only now, she was the one trapped in the middle of the story. The door at the top of the stairs creaked open. A figure appeared, Captain Harris, holding a flashlight and a revolver. I told you to leave it alone, Detective, he said calmly as he descended the stairs. You just couldn't help yourself. Sarah's jaw tightened. You were his partner, she said, her voice hoarse. Archibek wasn't working alone. You were the other man. Harris chuckled softly, shaking his head. I kept that secret for 30 years, and now you've dragged it all back into the light. Why? She demanded. Mary Quigley was just a student. Why her? He sighed deeply, lowering the flashlight slightly. Mary saw something she shouldn't have. Archibek and I were working undercover back then. A sting operation gone bad. Some dirty money moved through town, and she got caught in the middle. The higher-ups wanted it cleaned up quietly. But Archie, he went too far. Sarah's heart pounded. You covered it up. I protected this department, H. Harris snapped, slamming the flashlight onto the table. One mistake, one mess, and they would have torn anyone believe it was just another unsolved tragedy. He took a step closer, his shadow stretching across the floor. But when you started digging, when you started asking questions, you made me nervous. Then Archie decided to talk. So I made sure he couldn't. Sarah stared at him, realization hitting her. You killed him, in prison. He tilted his head slightly, neither confirming nor denying it. Loose ends, detective. That's all this ever was. Her pulse raced. You won't get away with this. Harris smiled faintly. You still don't get it. There's nothing to get away with. The people who mattered back then, they're either dead or retired. No one cares anymore. He walked behind her, the sound of his boots echoing. Sarah's fingers worked furiously, trying to loosen the tape binding her wrists. You know, Harris continued, his voice low. You remind me of her. Same fire, same stubbornness. It's a shame, really. Before he could finish, Sarah twisted her hands free and lunged sideways, knocking the chair over. It hit the floor hard, splintering as she rolled to the side. Harris turned, startled. The gun went off, a deafening crack that echoed through the basement. The bullet hit the wall inches from her head. Sarah scrambled to her feet, grabbing a broken chair leg as Harris advanced. She swung it with everything she had, striking his arm. The gun clattered across the floor. Both dove for it. For a moment, everything was chaos. Grunts, footsteps, the sound of struggle. Dust filled the air. Harris grabbed her wrist, trying to twist the gun away, but she drove her knee into his chest. The revolver went skidding across the floor again. Sarah reached it first. She pointed it at him, hands trembling but steady. Enough. Don't, she said. Harris froze, breathing hard. For a moment, the only sound was the rain hitting the roof. Then he smiled bitterly. You think anyone will believe you? You think you can clean up something that's been rotten since before you were born? Sarah's eyes burned, not with fear, but anger. I don't have to clean it up. I just have to tell the truth. Harris took one slow step forward, then do it. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint at first, then louder. Red and blue lights flickered through the cabin windows. Harris turned his head for half a second, and Sarah took her chance. She swung the revolver by its barrel, striking him hard across the jaw. He hit the ground and didn't move. She stood there for a long moment, chest heaving, staring down at the man who had carried a lie for 3 decades. Then she dropped the gun and stumbled toward the stairs. Outside, the night was alive with flashing lights. Parker rushed to her side, helping her down the steps. Jesus, Sarah, we thought we lost you. He confessed, she said quietly, barely able to speak. Everything. Mary, Archibald, the cover-up. It was him. Parker looked back toward the cabin as officers swarmed inside. We'll get it all on record. It's over. But Sarah wasn't so sure. She looked out at the dark forest beyond the police lights. The same woods where Mary Quigley's life had ended 30 years ago. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried that same heavy silence. She thought about the letter she'd found in the evidence box. There's someone inside the department. He knows more than he should. Harris was one man. But what if he wasn't the only one? The next morning, headlines exploded across the country. Cold case solved after 30 years. Detective exposes corruption behind college student's death. Sarah became a local hero, the face of justice finally catching up to the past. But behind the cameras and applause, she couldn't shake one detail: the handwriting on Harris's old files. It wasn't his. Weeks later, while cleaning out her desk, she found a plain envelope slipped between her papers. No name, no address. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single blood ran cold. Someone else was still out there, and they had just made their move. If you were hooked till the end, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more true crime stories that prove one thing: the past never stays buried.